Well, we're at it again, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for your commitment to desire to grow, believing that regroup, flare, the partners groups are all places where there can be growth in your faith, growth in your healing, growth in your recovery, in the trauma that you faced, the mistakes that you've made, that God can continue to work in you and bring healing. This is the third in 2025's questions from all the different groups. And today, the questions are coming from the Flare group, which is women who are working with love and sexual addiction, and also from the partners groups. We have a lot of questions from there as well. And so those will be very helpful for those recovering addicts to also hear that the sexual addiction struggle for a man and a woman is basically same. There will be some nuances of differences. And so the questions will help all of us there. And then also the partners questions, the questions that, the partners, the wives in most cases are asking are very insightful for us to hear not only what their questions are, but my responses to those questions. Because as you hear me guide them, you'll know why they think the way they think, and it will help you. Because many of your wives will have been in the partners groups at some point. And so yeah, so I'm going to go ahead with the questions. We have six from the Flare group, and then we have eight from the Partners group, and that'll be it for today. And I hope you will find a lot of rich encouragement as I answer these questions. All right. Question number one. Why do those who struggle with addiction continue to engage in it even though they no longer find it comforting or know it's wrong? Well, first of all, we got to understand addiction is the inability to say no to something. First of all, there's the psychological habit of going there to find comfort. There is the release side of it, the biological side, where there is comfort for a moment, even though the guilt and the shame maybe follows afterwards. But there is a habitual thing going on. There is also how do you say there is an addictive thing, a biological addiction going on. Like you can't just turn it off like, okay, I'm done with that. And there's a switch on the wall. I'm pointing to the switch in my office here. There's a switch on the wall. I just turn, okay, it's done. Right? Because remember what happens is this thing has developed over time and has gone deeper and it's gathered momentum. And it doesn't just shut down with a switch turning. There is work to get freedom, work to get healing in the heart. Remember, deal with your soul pain. And so, they continue to engage in it because it is addictive, and they haven't maybe dealt with their soul wounds yet. And so, we're all on a journey to learn how to say no, to learn how to walk away, learn to build strength, learn to remember the opposite of addiction is connection. And so, you need to be connected to other people in your group and have wingmen, accountability people that you're known by, that they can love you and help you and build into your life. And so, yeah, so it's not just an issue of why can't I just stop? It would be nice if it was that easy. Number two, um, why do so many people lie about addiction, even though they keep getting caught? Well, first of all, remember that I've said many times, a matter of fact, I have a whole talk that you can listen to in the regroup video teaching on um, addicted to lying. Understand that most people who struggle with addiction are addicted to secrecy, addicted to hiding, they're addicted to lying. And so if someone says, "Hey, I noticed this website here. It's kind of questionable. Was that you on there?" "Oh no, oh no, what? I don't know how it got there. I don't know." And they're acting shocked. Remember, they're trying to cover. They're trying to maintain a sense of dignity, even though there's a shame and there's embarrassment about it, right? And so again, most people who struggle with an addiction, whether it's even alcohol, drug addiction, whatever, it tends to be a private thing. They go there, to medicate and deal with their inner pain, but they lie about it, they hide it. One person who was an alcoholic that I worked with, lived kind of like on a fruit and dairy farm, and he would hide alcohol out in the rows of the raspberries, and he would go out working only to be come back rather intoxicated, and people's, what weren't you out there working in, the raspberries or whatever? And oh yeah, yeah, and the guy is really in a bad place. But you see, addicted to lying is part of it. And of course, the sad thing, keep getting caught. It just keeps making it worse because every time they lie and then get caught, it re-traumatizes the partner, and it destroys the trust even more. And it's better to admit it if you struggle and relapse. And remember, that's why we have the 24-hour rule, that if you do relapse, that you actually tell your spouse and your accountability partner within 24 hours. Um, Third question. Do women with sexual addiction different from men with sexual addiction? In the broad sense, no, because addiction is addiction. But I do believe, as I've worked with some women, and usually I allow other women to help women, but in the past I've worked with women who've struggled with sexual addiction, and talked to a lot of them. Sometimes I work with a husband and wife who both have sexual addiction, and the recovery process, the documents that I've created, as it were, for many of the men that I've worked with, would be documents that would work for any woman who is struggling with sexual addiction as well. They're not gender specific as a general rule, but there are nuances. There are some differences. I think that many women have the greater potential to have sexual addiction that is a derivative that comes from a love addiction, needing to be affirmed, needing to be um, validated, needing to be pursued, and some insecurities they have with their womanhood or their own worth. Sometimes they're desiring to be noticed, they're desiring to be pursued, and it becomes sexual because they do have a sexual addiction. But so there are nuances that might be a little different. Um, and but like the other things about, isolation, secrecy, lying, shame, regret, the whole addiction cycle is the same, whether it's men or women. And so I would say, as a general rule, they could be treated the same, but there are some nuances that are a little different that would be wise to work to be aware of. Number four, how do I attract a good man that will honor me and not want me only to use for sexual things? First of all, thank you for asking that question, because you're now asking good questions, because a person has to love you for who you are, not for what you bring to the bedroom. And so remember, when you've had a dangerous sexual addiction and a draw to be intimate, too often, if we're being flesh on flesh, the mind is saying, well, he must love me. Yeah, he must love me because we're being sexual. No, you could be a toy in his toolbox. You could be just someone that he is taking advantage of. And so you attract a good man by establishing standards. You attract a good man by saying, we're not going to be intimate in sexual play around. We're not going to be flirting with this thing. I want him to love me for who I am without any sexual frolicking or whatever. And so I tell people when I'm helping them, matter of fact, it would be good if you grabbed the first book in the series that I wrote, The Ideal I Do, and it'll guide you for how to choose a good man. It'll, matter of fact, look for the article even on the website, loving with your eyes wide open. And it's about 60 questions to ask somebody before you get serious with them in a relationship. And so you attract a good man by actually deciding, I'm going to go after good men. I won't get involved sexually. I'll talk to a good friend and I'm going to put down on paper what are the things that I really want in a husband down the road or in a wife down the road for the single men listening. And you can choose to be honored. If a guy, starts pushing you sexually, you can just say, that's it. Let's take me home. I'm done. I don't want to go here. You can set those parameters early. You can speak of them early. And if it goes there, you can just end the relationship. Uh, Number five from the Flare group is internet protection even useful? Can't addicts just bypass anyway? Yes, yes, they can. If you are completely addicted, you will circumvent. You will find ways. You will, find a son's phone. You will find an old computer. You will, you know, do all kinds of ways to circumvent. But what happens is when a person is desiring freedom, to put uh, protection software on your devices just makes it one more step that they have to do to to actually defy the protection software by circumventing and going around it. What I like to say though is, if we're talking alcohol, we start by taking all the alcohol out of the house. That's like protection software. You don't have a fridge or a cooler full of alcohol and be trying to recover from, a drinking problem. And so we're trying to take away instant, easy accessibility where if I'm struggling and I just go there in a heartbeat. At least when I'm actually trying to circumvent it, there are more steps I have to go through to get to that place. And the good thing about that software is it reports to the one they're accountable to that they have circumvented it or tried to circumvent it, tried to get to questionable sites, and it does inform, at least in some ways, that they've taken it off. And so I like to think that while a person is in the early stages of recovery, and like this computer that I'm speaking to you on this morning, it has covenant eyes on it, and I'm a speed freak. It doesn't slow me down. But my grandkids can't accidentally get on my computer and get to anything questionable because it'll block them. I get a report every week that, all good. There've been no inappropriate sites, and my accountability partner, has access to that as well. So it's just a safeguard for the person that's in recovery that it doesn't become instantly easy. And the accountability software side says, hey, just, you should check with them because they tried to get to a questionable site, or they circumvented, or they actually, um, uh, took off the protection software. There's information sent about that as well. So I would say that having protection software is wise for everybody, so that there has to be some pretty serious work to circumvent it, to be that deliberate, to go back to the porn. Number six from the Flare questions: why is erectile dysfunction more common these days? Is it associated with porn use? First of all, the quick answer is yes. They have showed growing evidence that the longer there is the physiological connection to a two-dimensional screen, like looking at a phone or looking at an iPad or a computer, um, to the brain sees this two-dimensional image as real. And when the PMO cycle, porn, masturbation, orgasm cycle, is repeated over and over and over again, what happens is this is now the brain being told and learning this is how we do sex. We look at a two-dimensional screen, we put ourselves first, we get our jollies fixed and met, and that's sex. So when a person tries to be intimate with a three-dimensional person, spouse or whatever, the mechanism doesn't work. It doesn't fire up because the brain is saying, what's this? What are you doing? No, no, no. It's look at this and do this and get your need met right now. Don't think about the other person, etc. And understand that erectile dysfunction is. I mean, they have studies that have shown that repeated porn use incapacitates a person to love well. Because when you're doing the PMO thing, it's objectifying people and it's self-centered sex. Healthy intimacy in a marriage is other-centered, and the person's not an object, they're a person. We're learning to make love, not just have sex. And so erectile dysfunction is more common and it is associated with porn use. Now, there's other things that are affecting erectile dysfunction. It's not like that's the only reason. There could be health issues, could be an issue of weight. There could be diabetes going on. There could be meds that they're taking. It could be depression. All of these things affect the ability to maintain an erection or be aroused from the female side as well. And so hopefully that was the direction of a healthy answer. Now, the partners questions, and this would be wise for all of those who have partners that have been hurt by their addiction to listen to these questions and their answers, because these are what they're asking, and hopefully my answer will be an encouragement to them, and we'll go from there. So, number one, is it unreasonable to have an expectation that my husband doesn't think sexually of other women? Okay. It'd be really good for the person who asked this question to listen to the talk that I did. When does temptation become a sin? You see, if I'm walking through a mall with you, you and I are walking through a mall, and coming towards us is this 20-something woman with a baby in a carriage, and she's a very attractive 20-something woman, and maybe sexually appealing to the eye of the beholder, and so I have a choice to make. I will see her, and snap would be, she's a really pretty young girl. Wow, she's built. And I decide right there what I'm going to do. Now, that thought flash is not a sin. I'm not going anyplace with it. I notice and then I make a decision. So I go into a conversation with you more, and I know she's walking by. We talk about the second long looks where I'm going like this as she's going by, and I'm scoping more. You see what I'm saying? That's why we say it's the second long look that kills, because the second look is a choice I'm making to see and have that thought flash. Wow, she's attractive, or for the women, he's attractive. But to choose for there, say, okay, no, as it says in Timothy, I'm going to treat that woman as a sister with absolute purity. And if it's a waitress at a restaurant, I look at her eyes, and she has dressed a little bit inappropriate, I will be looking at the menu and talking to my wife and not interacting with her in an inappropriate way. Or I make her into a person by asking, "What are you doing? Are you in school, or how long have you been working here?" And you make him into a person instead of see them as an object. So the question is it unreasonable to have an expectation that my husband doesn't think sexually about other women? That's a good expectation to have. I do not want you to think sexually. That means I chose to dwell on that. But it's not that he can turn off, I noticed. But I didn't go where. I didn't go anyplace. Do you see what I'm saying? So your husband is responsible to not go anyplace. And if he is tempted to do that, he needs to call in, a buddy, and just do whatever he needs to do to get back on track, so he doesn't go with that thought flash. Because the more I choose to do the second look and dwell on that other person's physical appearances, the more I am objectifying them, and I'm choosing to sin. So first of all, it's a wonderful expectation to desire that your spouse doesn't objectify other people. But it does not mean that they will never notice pretty people. My wife and I were just in Puerto Vallarta. We were doing 8 and 10 kilometer walks along the beach, and there was every body known to man, male and female, on those beaches. And yeah, I mean, I make choices with my eyes. Like, I make choices, and I don't, I see a certain frame. Some of them I don't even want to see or remember, right? But regardless, I actually make choices with my eyes that I'm not going to do a second long look in that direction with those 3 young women, laying there. I'm not going to go there. My wife's right there. I'm going to treat her with respect by not ogling and scoping people. That is where it's wrong. But I mean, I'm walking down the beach. My wife and I play this game because we're 69 years old, and we're walking together, and we see a couple coming to, older or younger. Are they older than us or younger than us? We look at them, and we have a little game we play. Anyway, so there's the thought about number one. Number two, when your husband has a sexual addiction, intimacy anorexia, and ADHD, right? Attention deficit hyperactive disorder, Does healing and restoration of the marriage look different? Is it reasonable to ask that he do check-ins, love link, or both? Do these things even help with ADHD? So, first of all, the kind of questions that this person's action is asking is showing a lot of insight, because intimacy and anorexia is the inability to connect emotionally, spiritually, and sexually to your partner. And we do things like a love link to build the ability to connect emotionally. Okay, so that's a good thing. And then the other side, check-ins, which all addicts should be doing check-ins with their spouse once a week to inform. It's a voluntary weekly update of what I'm doing to work on my addiction, to build trust with my spouse. And so the question they're asking about check-ins and love link or both, they're fine and they should be happening. Now, are they even going to be a help when a person is having ADHD? So what happens is ADHD can be a hurdle to work through, but it cannot be an excuse that I use. Well, I can't do this, God, I have ADHD. Not so. Not so. We have to accept that. For instance, if it becomes a commitment and a habit, it's going to help more. So they won't want to do like maybe Love Link or the check-ins, but like as far as just, well, the ADHD person always forgets and, et cetera, et cetera. Well, so they put on their phone Sunday night. Yeah, we're going to check in at 9:15 every Sunday night. My phone goes off, your phone goes off, and that's where we're gonna do a 15-minute weekly recovery update so you can grow in your trust of me. So, does sexual addiction, intimacy, anorexia, and ADHD make the recovery harder? Yes, but it needs to be an ongoing commitment by the addict to show love to his spouse that this behavior is hurtful and is separating them, and he needs to take responsibility to deal with it. Number three, if my husband says he feels judged when I share my triggers and concerns, is that an area that I need to work more on forgiveness or possibility? Am I not forgiving? Well, first of all, that you have triggers. Remember, let's just say he's been struggling for 8 to 10 years with this, and you've been, hurt by it many times, come back to it and discover it again, right? It's going to take a long time for you to rebuild trust with your husband after many years of, being betrayed by his relapses or whatever. So you're going to have concerns, you're going to have triggers, and you can listen to the teaching on it. Read the article about Betrayed, the art of rebuilding trust, and or what to do if my wife is triggered, and talk that document through with your husband so that you can know how to better handle triggers together. Does he feel judged? Yeah, because he wants in his mind to, okay, I've quit now. It's been 4 months and you're still being triggered. Okay, but remember, let's just make it not too extreme. He struggled for 4 years. Well, you don't all of a sudden get over this in 4 months. He's got to show consistency. He's got to show recovery effort. He's got to show really loving you and putting you first. He's got to rebuild trust by consistency, and we believe behavior. We do not believe what he says. So the husband who's saying, "I feel judged," there you go. Every time you're triggered, it makes me feel bad. That's the addict still talking. That's the immature man who makes it all about him. Well, poor me. Do you realize how hard this is? This is really hard for me too. When you get triggered and okay. So that is a man who hasn't learned empathy yet. And so yeah, I think that there's some lessons to learn. Talk about this with your counselor together. The addict has to, at least for a year to a year and a half, just take it in the chin when the spouse is triggered and just say, honey, I'm sorry. This is all on me. And can't go to, I feel judged. When are you going to forgive me? Don't go there. Don't go there. And yeah. And if nothing else, listen to this answer together with your spouse and have a discussion on it. And that would be good. And then talk to your counselor about it as well. Number four, when my husband feels controlled because of boundaries and my need for safety, How do I create safety without him making him feel like he's being controlled? Okay. So boundaries are creating limits. Okay. Boundaries are creating safe limits that you need. Boundaries are healthy. You have a right to have boundaries. Certain things bother you, trouble you, and have a right. It's not crazy that you were bothered by them. So that the boundaries are set because he has not had his own boundaries. He has not respected you. He has not respected you. I wouldn't need to put boundaries if you lived with your own boundaries and lived with respect. And so the boundaries are there so that I can feel safe. And I'm not trying to control you because my controls should be the least of your concerns. You should have your own controls, husband who's struggling with addiction, that make me feel safe. And you should report in what you're doing so I do feel safe. And you should get in this program and finish the 12th step and get a whole year free and show me that you love me, and you set your own boundaries. But in the meantime, when you are a man without boundaries or inconsistent boundaries or things where I don't feel safe, I need to create boundaries so I feel safe, because right now you don't make me feel safe. And so the man who feels controlled by boundaries is because he hasn't set boundaries that make her safe yet. And his boundaries need to be higher and stiffer so that she goes, man, I really respect you. Thank you for having those boundaries. While he's still in addiction fog and coming out of it, you have a right to set boundaries. You have a right because he doesn't have good boundaries that will establish trust. And that's going to take some time. So talk that through with your spouse as well. Number 5 of the partner questions. How does a married couple make sex fun and safe after the husband's sexual addiction and sexual abuse, even rape of his wife? Is it unreasonable to not want to engage in certain positions where we can't even see each other's face or whatever, and not have a husband that feels, sex that is, boring or whatever? So uh, to reset sexually after the sexual involvement has been a derivative of a porn addiction or sexual addiction is a hard thing to do. Freedom will come in time, but recognize that when a person is trying to move beyond sexual addiction and even intimacy and anorexia, the point is we need to be looking into each other's eyes when we're intimate. And so various positions, there's nothing wrong with certain positions, but if they're more derivative and a history of the sexual addiction, variety has to be something that the couple agrees together on, not just as pushed by the person who has had a sexual past. They've made sexual involvement all about them. They've got to learn to be more selfless and more others centered in their involvement with their spouse. And so I would say that variation should be something that the hurt wife gets to put the parameters on, and that the husband has to look at growing in the area of learning how to make love, not just have sex, and it be less about positions and all, and more about being attentive and being focused on you and being eyes open and looking at you, because we know that that is part of the recovery needed for SA and IA as well. And yeah, I mean, there's a podcast that we've done on variety in sexuality, and you can listen to that podcast, and I talk about variation for the Christian marriage. Number 6, why do only some guys reset their all clear due to having lustful thoughts? So yeah, uh, I answered the question earlier about lusting after a person versus noticing them. Now, if the person is having repeated lustful thoughts and going with the second long look and scoping a waitress, knowing he went back to objectify her and all that, that needs to be a reset in my mind. You see, if you haven't, whoever asked this question, if you haven't seen the document that says all clear doesn't leave a lot of room for fuzzy. Well, I wasn't sure what that meant. There's nothing fuzzy about all clear with the regroup recovery process. But why some guys reset and others justify that they don't need to? Well, first of all, I don't really know the the where the mind went with that man and whether he's telling me the whole truth or not. In some ways, it's resetting is a voluntary thing. Sometimes guys say, "Hey, listen, if you were me, would this deserve a reset?" And if there was an intentional kind of like second look or playing mentally about that person you saw early in their day and you're having sexual thoughts about them, I would say that is a reset. But I'm not involved in all the people's lives. I write the document, right, about all clear and what the wingman is supposed to ask. And in those things, you will see what all clear looks like. And remember, seeing again a pretty body, male or female, but seeing that person, it depends what I do with that. Noticing them, having a thought flash of, golly, he's attractive, she's attractive. That's one thing. But then if I go someplace with it, that's where I believe the reset is needed. Number seven, how can a partner group help the regroup? What information would the sexual addicted person like to know from the partners? Well, uh, I I think this is a fabulous question because I think it'd be really good if a group of partners said, these are five things that we really need from our men in recovery. Or if it's, men partners whose wives are addicted, these are five things that I need. Um, Usually, the documents that we've created imply that we have listened to you and we know what you need to feel safe. And but I would unquestionably welcome if a group of partners said, "This is what we need to feel safe. These five or six things." And excuse me, if you'd want to have a discussion and put that together and run it by Karen, the partners recovery leader, or Valerie, the Flair leader, and run those, what you need. I would do a whole talk on that. Now, I would argue that the documents that I've created to help men understand where you're at, well, we'll see how close I think I am. But in any case, and if this person here that's asking the question hasn't been to Purge yet, you need to come to the 11-hour seminar that I kind of, um, do a crash course on understanding your spouse's sexual addiction, and that might be helpful. So yeah, I would say that put that list of needs together and send them to me, and I'll do a talk on it, and we'll see if I'm tracking with you or not. And finally, the betrayal caused a totally broken and shattered trust. How does that get addressed in regroup? Well, remember, every person's on a recovery journey, and so let's just say your particular husband comes in to regroup, say January 1st. Well, they haven't heard the talk about rebuilding trust. They haven't heard, discussion about partner betrayal trauma yet. They haven't, and depending on their counselor, they may not have got the document about what to do when your spouse is triggered. So regroup is building, 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 building. But it's not like every time a new person comes, we all start again with some of these basic things that we have to work through. They're all there. There's over 200 teaching videos that contain everything that's needed. So you can go in there as a betrayed partner, look at those and say, I would like us to listen to this together. Dave talks about rebuilding of trust here. Let's watch it together and let's discuss it. And so this idea specifically about broken trust and rebuilding trust and how to help a wife when she's triggered and those kind of things are all part of the whole training package. But for instance, a new guy starting with regroup, He may not hear something about that for 2 or 3 months, not because it's not important, but we're also hoping that he has a counselor that is working through some of those things, and that you as a couple are working through some things. And that question about betrayal, that question about rebuilding of trust, that question about how to face triggers will be answered in your counseling, as well as reinforce and regroup. See, regroup is to come alongside and help people in their recovery journey. It's not to replace counseling. I would argue that, for most men, it's 6 to 10 hours of counseling as they get into regroup that's going to help them be in a good track. It's not like come to 1 or 2 counseling sessions and now I've been helped enough, I go to regroup and everything's good. Nah. And sometimes you have to go from working with the partner who's hurt and the addict who's created the hurt separately, then together. And so there's individual work for each, and then there's couple work, as well as the reinforcement of the groups to help drive it home. And so I hope that was a clear answer for you. So yeah, you know that every year I answer your questions as best I can. My heart is to help you grow, to help your marriage grow, to help your recovery be genuine, to help it be deep and lasting. And so, as you listen to these questions, my prayer is that you would use them to grow yourself. You'd use them as a wonderful interactive tool to stimulate conversation between you and your spouse, and that you would find healing individually and as a couple as you move forward in your betrayal trauma and your addiction recovery. So, God bless you, and thanks for listening.